Indivisible's Facebook Live. We have a lot to cover here today. There was a big week last week that we want to go over. My name is Angel Padilla. I'm the Policy Director here at Indivisible, and I'll let Chad and Kenora introduce themselves.
I'm Chad Bolt. I'm a Policy Manager on the Policy team.
I'm Kenora Oja. I'm one of the Organizing Managers on the Organizing team.
Awesome. So before we get started, just one thing that we think, one thing you can do immediately to help out is if you don't mind sharing the Facebook Live so we can get our message across, that'd be awesome. And before we actually get started, we have a new group. The latest group is My Brother's Keeper out of Mission, Texas, that Kenora's going to do the honors here.
Yeah, so our newest group is
I'm totally in the way.
Down south, right here. Welcome.
All right.
Awesome. Welcome, My Brother's Keeper.
Very nice.
All right, so we have a lot to cover, and we definitely want to get to your questions, so we'll just jump right in. It's been an incredible last week. As I'm sure you've all seen, the last 7 days have been pretty crazy. Starting with last Tuesday when we had a key procedural vote where John McCain came back just to vote on this procedural vote, and then we had a crazy week that Chad's going to just go into in a second. Basically what happened last week was an amazing victory that we got because of all of your hard work over the last 7 months. This is something, again, we killed 3 different Trump care bills last week, and this is something that Republicans have been talking about for 7 years. This is something that was a day one priority for Donald Trump, and this is something that that we've been working on for 7 months. And I know that a lot of you keep talking about. One of the questions we get all the time is, when is this going to finally end? Chad is going to answer that question about whether or not this is actually over. But something that you should all celebrate is that this is an amazing victory. And so Kenora actually has some really awesome stories about all the work that you guys are doing. She has some stories from the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Angel said, we owe last week's victory to the hard work of you all on the ground. I just feel so much gratitude for being able to work with groups like yours who are doing the hard work and really making all of the difference. So it's my pleasure to shout out some specifics of groups making a difference all over the country. I want to start with Indivisible East Tennessee. We all heard the news today that Congressman Duncan is not going to be seeking re-election, and interestingly enough, he happened to mention lefty protest groups in his statement, which is kind of unusual for a congressman who's not seeking re-election. I suspect that means you all made quite an impression on him. And this is a pretty big deal because he's one of the longest standing incumbents in Tennessee. So really big deal. Excited to see that for you all in East Tennessee. I also want to give a shout out to Indivisible Utah. We all have a really unhealthy obsession with Twitter in this office, and we're excited to see you all tweeting at Orrin Hatch. You all asked him if he stands with trans Americans after Trump's terrible announcement a few days ago, and he replied back to you, simple one-word answer, I think it was. I think he just said yes, that he stands with them. Really proud to see that you were all skeptical and pressed him on it a little bit, asked him, to prove it, make a statement, something. And then he did, and told a lot of reporters that he does indeed stand with trans Americans, which is a really huge deal coming from Orrin Hatch. And that was a direct result of you all pushing him a little bit harder. Also want to shout out our groups in Columbus, Georgia, in Chicago, in Phoenix, and all over the country for being great coalition partners and participating in the Our Lives on the Line event. Many groups, including Women's March groups, helped put those together, and we were really excited to see so many of our own groups standing indivisible with them and being great partners in the resistance. So awesome to all of our folks who participated in that over the weekend. I was also really excited to see the Thank You Lisa rallies happening in Anchorage, Alaska. Senator Murkowski was one of the key votes that led to the victory last week, and the relentless pressure of groups in Alaska is exactly why she did that. So thank you so much for doing that. And I also want to shout out the fact that you all changed your message to thank you. After so much pressure, it's really important to give some of that positive reinforcement. It's a little bit more rare for senators to see that, and something that our groups are especially good at doing. So really awesome work changing your message and making sure that she hears your voices even after the fact. And then I also wanted to shout out One of our awesome group members in Indivisible, Texas, in the 21st district, she was able to sneak a banner into the Capitol by wearing it as a sari. So as a brown girl, I got to give you some props for that ingenuity. Really excited to see it. I've had some experience sneaking banners into different places, but never had thought of that. So definitely going to be incorporating that in the future. Props to Indivisible Texas 21. So those are some of our highlights from the field. I could wax poetic about how grateful I am to work with creative groups like yours all night, but I think we should pass it back over and talk about what's happening, what the state of play is.
Yeah, so Chad is going to go into what actually happened last week, because I'm sure a lot of you have questions about how that all played out. I mean, this was a midnight vote, which is symbolic of the way the Republicans have approached this, but I did want to just quickly talk a little bit about some of the things that we're hoping to work on more in the next few months. This is a huge, huge win. We can't stress how important this last win was on healthcare, but what this does is it allows us to focus a little bit more work, a little bit more attention on other issues that are really important to all of us. Things that are coming up are things like tax reform, things like an infrastructure bill, things like immigration policies that not only the Trump administration but also Congress is very eager to implement. These are things that are coming our way in the next few weeks and months, and so we need to start making sure that we are prepping as necessary. Another thing that we're getting a lot of questions on is Mueller. What happens if Mueller gets fired? If Mueller gets fired, this is a constitutional crisis, and we've already seen a number of these under this administration. We're already calling for impeachment hearings over the Russia-Comey situation, and if Mueller gets fired, it just escalates the issue. So we know that there are a lot of issues that you guys want to be working on, and we will provide resources. We are in the middle of providing resources for August recess and moving forward. But with that, I did want to just kick it over to Chad, who's going to just give us a break down what happened last week for all of you.
All right, so it was an amazing week filled with highs and lows, to be sure. So it all started, Senator McCain made a return to the Senate. They unfortunately got the 50 votes they needed to move forward on the first procedural vote, the motion to proceed. So that really kicked off this crazy week. But you guys stuck with us the whole time. It was highs and lows filled with nutty Senate procedure, but you stuck with us through all three different bills that we ended up killing. The first one was the Trump Care bill in the Senate that we've been fighting for over a month. The second one, that one failed. The second one was a full repeal bill. That one failed. And then the third one was this skinny repeal bill that they put out not until around 10:30, 11 p.m. on Thursday night, the night they were voting on it, is when we finally got to see the text. There was 1 hour of debate on it in the Senate. That's it. 1 hour of debate from around 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. on a Thursday night. And fortunately, they didn't have the votes. And again, like these guys said, it's thanks to your amazing pressure. But the Republican senators that voted with all of the Democrats were Senator Murkowski from Alaska, Senator Collins from Maine, and Senator McCain from Arizona. And so that bill failed too. So where are we now? A lot of folks are asking, is Trump Care dead? So this was a huge, huge victory. The analogy that I've been using is Republicans were on the 1 yard line with 3 downs left to play, and they did not get the ball into the end zone. All right, that's a football. That's a football analogy from me. So I had to put some thought into that. So is Trump Care dead? It was as close as they've ever come to passing it, but Trump Care won't truly be dead, honestly, until we retake at least one chamber of Congress. Until then, they can keep bringing it back. I want to debunk something that went around over the weekend. It was this theory from Reddit that John McCain was actually a Machiavellian procedural genius, and that he sabotaged the Republican efforts to pass this through reconciliation. Unfortunately, that is not true. Republicans still very much can use reconciliation to pass a Trump Care bill in the Senate with only 50 votes. In fact, they're planning to do it now. Senators Graham and Cassidy are pushing a bill that they have. They've actually met with the White House about it. And crazy as it is, it still keeps many of the same pieces of Trump care that we've seen before. It would still destroy Medicaid as we know it by turning it into a cap system. It would still defund Planned Parenthood. It would still allow for state waivers that hurt people with pre-existing conditions and folks who need treatment for opioid abuse. So a lot of the same things. Some different approaches too that are also terrible. It would take the money currently helping people to afford insurance through tax credits. It would take that money, cut it, give it out to the states, and with no accountability. So a different approach, but an equally terrible one. So that's what's happening legislatively. From the administration standpoint, they still are able to sabotage the Affordable Care Act from the inside. And we've seen at least 3 big pieces of evidence on that. One, you've heard us talk before about cost-sharing reductions. These are payments that the federal government makes to insurers to help people afford their copays and deductibles. Every month they go out, the administration threatens to hold them hostage, creating tremendous uncertainty, and it's that uncertainty that insurers are talking about when asked why they are leaving marketplaces. Number 2, they canceled contracts in 18 different cities to help people sign up for plans through the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. And 3, that's right. We also heard reporting last week that they are actually using their funding that's supposed to go to public outreach to inform people about the marketplace and their healthcare options. They actually use that funding to make anti-ACA propaganda videos. So 3 direct pieces of evidence of sabotage from the Trump administration. So there's that. The last piece that's still happening and we'll continue to see happening on healthcare is that there are actually a handful of moderate Republicans talking about working on a bipartisan process with Democrats. Both Senator Collins and Murkowski have talked about kicking this back into regular order, having committee hearings as you would expect to see in regular order, and that is something we support. We think there should be transparency. We should have expert testimony, CBO scores, committee hearings, etc.
Great.
So why don't I leave it there?
Yeah, so, and I'm sure you all have more questions for Chad, so if you guys have questions, please use the chat. Make sure you put the questions in the comment section, and we'll try to get to them. And another thing, don't forget to share this Facebook Live video if you can, and just hit the share button, because I'm sure there are a lot of other people who have questions too. Now, just quickly want to turn it over to Kanur to talk about what things you can be doing. She mentioned one of these earlier, which is if your senator voted, however your senator voted, they need to hear from you. They need to get either positive and or negative reinforcement over how they voted.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a number of different ways that you can deliver that feedback to them. So right now, our emphasis is on planning for August recess. We keep on referring to it as mega recess here because it's a really, really long recess. They're not going to be home for just a week like usual. This is going to be an extended period of time. That means that you all have all the more opportunity to track them down, find them face to face, and deliver that feedback in person. Now that means that there are a few different things that you can do to be as effective as possible over August recess. So make sure that you set up a planning meeting with your team to talk through these different tactics and figure out when you're going to do them and how you're best going to do them. But let's go through what exactly they are. So the first of them is going to be canvassing. Now this is a little bit new for us. We haven't had folks talking to their neighbors and constituents so far, but after several months of pressure on a number of different issues, one of the things that we've been hearing from you all in the field is that your members of Congress are hiding from you. They know that you're angry at them. They know that you're watching their votes. They know that they're not acting in your best interest, and they don't want to hear about it. So we're seeing less and less town halls. We're seeing that they're not being as responsive as they should be. Frankly, they're not doing their jobs in that way. So if they're not doing that, if they're not going to talk to you, we want you to talk to other constituents. It's time to hold them accountable for all of the votes that they've been making that you all disagree with, and the best way for you to do that over August recess is to bring those concerns to other people in the same district. There are a couple of different ways to do that. So one of them is just simply go door to door in your own neighborhood and canvass everyone. We're going to provide materials and scripts for you all to be able to do that. Actually, if you take a look in the description of this video, once we're done, you'll be able to find a link to our resources. but it's simply going door to door and explaining to your neighbors what exactly your member of Congress did, how you feel about it, and then asking them to join you in the resistance, asking them to make a call to that same person. So you can do that door to door, or you can actually go to big public events where you know there are going to be a lot of people from your district. So go to a fair, go to your local farmers market, set up a table, and educate folks in your community about what exactly happened. So canvassing, we know, is one of the most effective things that you can do as a constituent. It's one of the most proven methods of moving someone to your side of an issue. So we are excited to be doing that all over the country this August. So the second tactic that we want folks to be doing is bird dogging. For folks who don't know what that is, bird dogging is a term that means asking a pointed question at a public appearance. So when one of your members is at home, they're going to be going to events like ice cream socials and ribbon cuttings and fundraisers. We want you to show up to those events and ask them to answer questions about why they voted the way they did on the issues that you care most about. Folks call it bird dogging, call it what you want. We want to make sure that you're tracking where they're going and that you're showing up and asking them the questions that they need to be answering. And then the third is the Indivisible Classic. We want you to show up to their town halls. We're going to have questions for you, as we always do. Be sure to check out our toolkit. It's linked in the description here. If you plan out your August recess with your team, go through all of those different tactics. We know it's going to be a really, really successful period in making sure that we're being heard all across the country. So with that, I think it's time.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go into questions. So again, if you have questions, please just just enter them in the comment, and we'll try to get to them. Oh, before we go to there, though, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to I got a message about a new Indivisible member in Indivisible San Diego, Patty Medina. Welcome to the movement. So with that, let's go to question number one. It's from Taryn from Oklahoma. My rep, Tom Cole, who helped whip the vote in the House with no CBO score, and admitting to his colleagues that he had not read the bill, is holding town halls this month. He has also been on TV since the last version of the bill was killed in the Senate, saying that he wants a bipartisan solution. What is the most effective way to hold him accountable at a town hall and keep him from brushing us off with an "I want a bipartisan solution" response? In other words, what is the best way to deal with his convenient flip-flopping?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. So I'm excited to see that you already know about a town hall. Like I said, some of the folks have been avoiding those a little bit. So it's great that you all have the opportunity to confront him and that you're already planning how to do it most effectively. The first thing I would say is call him out on exactly that. You know, the transparency problems were some of the worst we've seen in Congress, and so we want to make sure that we are calling out members on the opacity of the process, telling them that it's not okay, and asking them why they were okay with that. Make sure that you call him out exactly for that, especially since he admitted it. Use his words against him. And then, you know, if he starts to try to dodge the question in any way, you know, there's no reason that you can't ask a follow-up. Make sure that, you know, you use those events to really get actual responses from your congressman. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, but we have scripts, we have example questions to help you do exactly that, and we'll link to some of those things in the description. Yeah,
so there are literally a couple, maybe, you know, over 200 representatives in Congress and 49 senators who voted to take away your health care. These were indefensible votes. They would have caused a lot of harm to you, your family, the rest of this country, and they need to justify their vote, and you need to make sure that they do. So if you see them during recess, if you go to a town hall, make sure that they justify their vote. My guess is that some of these House members, the ones that voted to take away healthcare from 23 million people, they don't even know how many people in their own district would have lost coverage. We have those numbers on our website. Ask them, do you know how many people would have lost coverage in our own district? And I bet you they don't even know. Next question here from Cindy from California. I just heard about a bipartisan group of House Democrats and Republicans working together in something called the Problem Solvers Caucus, trying to stabilize the health insurance market and pushing for ACA changes that have had bipartisan support in the past. This sounds hopeful. What do you guys think? Kick over to Chad, maybe?
I think it's exactly what they should be saying. They should have been talking about a bipartisan, open process, committee process all along. And there are definitely things where I think members agree. When I talked about the cost sharing reduction payments earlier that Trump is holding hostage, Congress can legislate that those payments go out the door and take the authority away from Trump to make those payments and make sure legislatively that they happen. Again, that's what's causing a lot of the uncertainty that insurers are saying is making them leave or raise prices. There's other things too. There's reinsurance, which is a way of covering people who are very, very sick. That I think has some bipartisan appeal, and certainly I think the idea of public outreach, making sure people understand what their healthcare options are, that's been kicked around as an idea for going into a bipartisan bill. So I think there are some ideas that people can agree on, and you're starting to see even Republicans now talk about needing to start over, that this process was so flawed because it wasn't bipartisan, it didn't go through regular order, and folks are saying that they need to start over in a bipartisan way. So I think those are positive signs.
Yeah, and so what's interesting is there is the one thing where there's bipartisanship right now is on opposition to this process. The reason why we won last week was obviously because of all your work, but because the way that they approach this just does not work. And so a bipartisan approach, the problem is Republicans are the ones in control of Congress. They set the agenda. So if we're going to get to bipartisan fixes, then they need to take the lead. And we won't settle for anything that cuts coverage or reduces benefits. And that's the bottom line for us, and it should be for everyone else in this country. Let's go to Joyce now. Her question is, what is the chance of returning to regular order? Maybe we should explain what regular order is first.
Yeah, good point. So regular order would just be having a committee process where expert witnesses testify, where both members of both parties have an opportunity to offer amendments, where the legislation is actually being considered in an open committee hearing and not behind closed doors by a select group assembled by leadership. This is the process that the Affordable Care Act went through, and there were actually over 100 Republican amendments incorporated into the Affordable Care Act through this process. Lisa Murkowski bragged at the time about getting 20 of her amendments into the Affordable Care Act. So that's what regular order would look like, and again, we're starting to see members from both parties talking about needing to return to it.
Yeah, and so the only way that, look, Mitch McConnell, if he can get away with it, he'll go back to the process he's been trying to use, which is trying to ram this through without regular order. The only way that we're going to stop that from happening is if you make sure that your senators don't allow that to happen. They need to be calling for regular order. And we've got some good comments over the weekend from Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins asking for committee hearings and expert testimony. So that's good, and we got to keep it up. Next question here is, Mary from New York. What can we do to stop the Graham-Cassidy bill? Is it going to get voted on?
Well, what you can do is what we've been talking about here. First off, it's so important that the Republicans that voted against Trump Care hear from you and how appreciative you are for that vote. It feels to them like they really stuck their necks out. They bucked their party on this. They were under tremendous pressure from the White House, from leaders in their own party to go along with everybody else, and they didn't do it. And so it's really important that they hear from you. Say thank you. Make sure you're reaching out. I'm a former Senate staffer. It sucks when your boss takes a tough vote and nobody calls to say thank you. So it's going to go a long way to make sure they know how much you appreciate their vote. And then if you've got other senators who maybe at some point were on the fence, keep the pressure on them. We got to the point where the vote failed because of the Senator Capito's and Portman and even Senator Heller, who on some previous iteration of the bill had opposed it. It's important to keep the pressure on them as well. And every senator, too, because you never know who could come out of the woodwork against some new iteration of the bill.
Great. Next question here, I think it's from Ralph. What are the statuses of the Sanders and Conyers Medicare for All bills in the Senate and House, respectively? So this is we get this question a lot. You know, there are a lot of folks out there who have been calling for a single payer. That's what Medicare for All is. It's a single payer system. And unfortunately, the truth is that Republicans control Congress. They set the agenda, and they don't have an appetite for Medicare for All. That's why our position now, our most important job right now is to defend what we have, defend those communities that would lose their coverage if Republicans got what they actually want, which is to eliminate coverage. Right now, as Chad was saying earlier, they're not done. They're still trying, and they will try again unless we stop them. So even though we want an affirmative policy done, even though we want to see increases in health coverage, right now the priority is to defend what we have. Next question is Emily from Illinois. What are some strategies to elicit input from young voters in our Indivisible group? Sounds like a good question for Kanor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited that you're asking this question, Emily. Engaging millennials and young people is something that I personally am really, really passionate about, and something that I think in general we can be doing a lot better. And when I say we, I mean the entire resistance, I mean the movement in general. Because young people are so affected by all of the issues that we've been talking about. And that's just as true of healthcare as it is about a number of different issues that we're going to be talking about in the future. So to engage them more in your group, I would ask yourself a couple of questions. If you have young people that are already in your group, they're coming to your meetings, are you offering them leadership positions? Are you choosing them when they raise their hand? When you allow them to speak for themselves and advocate for the issues that matter to them, more and more of them are going to join your group. They're going to feel empowered, and you're going to see those voices a lot more frequently. Young people are really, really affected by issues like healthcare, but also like jobs in the economy, also like so many other things. Make sure that you aren't pigeonholing them into any particular issue area. Involve them whenever you can. Bring them to all of the different events, and you'll see that the membership is going to be, changing as a result of that. The more welcoming you are.
Great. Next question here looks like Dilla. The members of our local Indivisible group seem exhausted, and coupled with summer vacations, there is much less engagement in activities. Do you have any recommendations for re-energizing and engaging our members? I have one. Kanor can better answer this, but honestly, we're all tired, right? This has been 7 months of fighting back a terrible, terrible, harmful agenda. So we got a big win last week. We should all take a minute and just enjoy that and celebrate that win, because it's important. We need to stay motivated. We need to enjoy those wins when we get it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that a lot of groups are feeling across the country, Dilla. We certainly were feeling it here after several weeks of nonstop attention on one issue. It's understandable why folks would be feeling that way. So definitely agree with Angel. It's so important to celebrate your victory. You all put in a lot of work, and it's and what we saw last week was a direct result of that. So acknowledge that, pat yourselves on the back, and allow yourselves to rest and self-care a little bit if you need it. Self-care is so important in the movement. And when I say self-care, I mean bonding as a community and being there for each other, taking the load off when you need it. Self-care isn't about spa treatments. It's about building community and trust and showing up for each other. I would also say, this is a good time for you to think about delegation and what you can do to bring others into your leadership team, so that the pressure isn't all on the same people who have been there over and over again. This is going to energize the new people that you're bringing in, who are really showing that they're interested. They're going to take on more. It's going to make it easier on the people who have been doing all of the work already. And it's also going to keep on bringing new people into the mix. I'd also say, some of these events that we've been talking about for August Recess are really, really great opportunities for recruitment. One of the things that we always say in organizing is, if you're not growing, you're shrinking. Things like summer vacation, things like exhaustion are always going to be happening. That's an ongoing process, that every organization has to work through, and that's not going to go away. Healthcare obviously was a long, drawn-out fight, but there are going to be others like that in the future. So make sure that you're finding opportunities to bring in new people. When you're canvassing at the door and you've got someone who made a commitment and it seems like they're on board with your cause, ask them if they want to get more involved and show up to a meeting. That's going to also help you, spread the load and bring new people in.
Great. And so that's about half an hour, the half an hour we had, and I know you all want to get to Rachel Maddow. So just one last thing I want to say is, look, there were a lot of bad votes taken last week. There were a lot of good votes taken last week. Make sure that you let your senators know over the next few weeks, and especially over the August recess. Give them feedback. This is so important. The only reason why we defeated those 3 bills is because of all your work, and we have to make sure that we keep this bill dead, and that's only going to happen if you keep up the pressure. And so with that, have a good night. Thanks for joining us, and enjoy Rachel Maddow.